Welcome to another Tutor Short provided by the Educational Support Services Department of Lehigh Carbon Community College in Schnecksville, PA, just outside Allentown. These videos provide key learnings for English and other writing-based courses provided here at L-Tri-C. Please remember that the Educational Support Services Department does provide walk-in tutoring 5 days a week. Online writing tutoring is also available through the college website. In the first part of this two-part video series on integrating sources into your essays, we talked about how to find sources and then how to evaluate those sources and determine whether or not they're really going to be useful or reliable or trustworthy sources for your paper. Today we're going to talk about how to take those sources that you found and integrate them effectively into your paper. Now, if you need a refresher from last time, or if you didn't watch those videos because you already know how to find sources, what we decided last time was to focus on the topic of the band Radiohead and the idea of anxiety or psychological distress that's present in a lot of their music. So we looked for a number of different sources, and we actually found a text called Radiohead and Philosophy that looked very promising. It was actually a collection of a number of smaller essays about Radiohead and their music and their lyrics and so on. Last time I looked at these essays briefly and just got a general sense of whether or not they might be useful on my own before making this video. I looked in more detail, read a couple of them, and picked out one that I think is going to be particularly useful. This is essay number 18 in the book, an essay entitled "The Signature of Time in Pyramid Song," which is one of their pieces. So what we're going to talk about today is how to take the information from an essay like this and integrate it into your paper in a useful way. So I've actually started to put together a paper here as an example. And this is actually, I've already put in the opening header of this is MLA format that we're working with. APA is a bit different, but we have a video on that you could look up. So we've got a typical MLA opening head here, and then the title, which is just a working title, Anxious Sound, Radiohead's Music and Psychology. And then I've put in here a thesis statement. Now, if you remember from our thesis statement videos, a thesis statement is a summary, a short summary of what argument we're trying to make that comes at the end of the first introductory paragraph. And this statement that I've chosen is: the music of the band Radiohead expresses psychological unrest, not just through the lyrical content, but through the sounds of the music itself. So I've narrowed down my argument a little bit from just, oh, Radiohead's music has a lot of anxiety to it, to Radiohead's music has anxiety not just because of the disturbing lyrics, but because of the actual way that the instruments are played and the sounds are layered and so on and so forth. So this is kind of what I'm setting out to prove. Now you can see there's not a whole lot here yet, which is actually okay. This is a fairly good model for how I start writing papers. Personally, often I'll start with an outline, but generally speaking, when I write a paper, I'm going through sources individually and pulling out content that I think is particularly valuable. So I'm not necessarily sitting down and writing it all in one go as one continuous piece. I'm writing little blurbs and paragraphs here and there that I can pull out, modify, expand upon, or delete completely as the rest of the essay starts taking shape. So let's talk first about what I've got here. I've got this little snippet of a paragraph here, and there's not a lot to it yet. It just says, "It is worth beginning an analysis of the anxious nature of Radiohead's music by discussing their lyrics." I decided to start here. Probably this is going to come at the beginning of the paper, because I want to establish that, yes, lyrically speaking, this band's music is unsettling in some way. So what I say here is, it is worth beginning an analysis of the anxious nature of Radiohead's music by discussing their lyrics. And then I've got this quote here from one of their songs: the dust and the screaming, the yuppies networking, which is kind of a freaky line, but kind of funny in a way. Yuppies was a term for young urban professionals. It was kind of a big term in the late 80s and 90s. Now, this is something that I see students do a lot. I've just sort of left this quote in here on its own without any kind of lead in or context. And I've done the same thing with the next quote, too. There are doors that open by themselves, there are sliding doors, and there are secret doors, but there are trap doors that you can't come back from. But there's nothing to really lead from my first statement to my next statement. This is a problem because it creates this jarring situation where suddenly I'm jumping between my own words and the text that I'm quoting. So I kind of need to go into some more detail here and explain why it is that I'm focusing on this particular set of quotes. So I'm going to type in a lead in here to make this better integrated with the whole. I'm going to say, perhaps the most obvious song to start with is the famous or infamous Paranoid Android. Which actually, I mean, that does make sense. Paranoia, that's kind of a psychological thing. So even the title is expressing kind of what I'm talking about in this essay. And now I want something to lead into the lyrics from this song that will make it a little bit clearer what I'm trying to say here. So I'll say something like, let's say the visuals of the song are quite disturbing. And then I'll put a colon here, and then we go into the lyrics. The dust and the screaming, the yuppies networking. And now there's one more thing you have to do when you add in a quote like this. You have to go to the end here and do an in-text citation. For an in-text citation, in MLA, you have this set of parentheses here, and then you type in the author. In this case, we'll cite it as Radiohead the band, and then a page number, which in this case, lyrics don't really have a page number, so we'll leave that blank. And notice that I've put the period at the very end after the citation, after the parenthetical citation, but I've put all of that, the period and the parenthetical citation, after the last quotation mark there. And then I'll add something to lead out and give some clarity here. I'll say something like, the first line here suggests disaster and ruin, while the second suggests skyscrapers and Wall Street, creating an uncomfortable juxtaposition. That's putting two things next to each other, juxtaposition, between seemingly unrelated ideas. Sounds pretty good. Certainly sounds academic. I've got another bit of text down here that I was playing around with that says, Radiohead's music is alarming and psychologically unnerving, not simply because of these lyrics, however. So obviously I'm thinking about how I'm going to lead from the first set of paragraphs to this set of paragraph. Not simply because of these lyrics, however, but also because of the sound of the music. Consider, for example, Pyramid Song from Amnesiac. Quote, the rhythm of the song seems skewed. It's because the song has a complex time signature that leads to rhythms that are out of joint with those of our ordinary experience. This adds to the sense of otherworldliness within the song. Now, again, the problem here is This whole thing is an orphaned quote. We're missing some sort of lead in that helps contextualize this quote and makes it seem less like an abrupt shift from my voice to the voice of whoever it is I'm quoting. In this case, I'm quoting one of those sources that I found. Yesterday, this Radiohead and Philosophy book, in this case, Michael Thompson's essay, The Signature of Time and Pyramid Song. So, actually, it's pretty easy to compose a lead in here. I got this quote from this opening passage here where he's discussing the song and how it is strange, unnerving. I actually got it from the second paragraph here. The rhythm of the song seems skewed. As it plays, you might ask, why does it sound like the notes are played a split second too late? It's because the song has a complex time signature that leads to rhythms that are out of joint with those of our ordinary experience. So what I'm going to say here in the essay is just a simple lead-in. Thompson points out that, quote, the rhythm of the song seems skewed. And now I've put this set of these three periods here. It's what we call an ellipsis. That indicates that if you look at this original quote here, there's this whole section where he's saying, as it plays, you might ask, why does it sound like the notes are played a split second too late? I decided that this particular line wasn't valuable to me. It didn't add anything to what I was trying to say, but the line before it and the line after it were good. So what I did was I just cut that line out. I just cut it out completely, and to indicate that I modified the original quote, I put these three dots here, this ellipsis, to show that something was removed. I'm also going to go ahead and, to make this flow better as a sentence, I'm going to make this T in the lowercase. And to do that, I'm putting brackets around it, those sort of like square parentheses. Square parentheses or brackets indicate that you've modified something in the text. Ellipsis show that you've taken something out. Brackets show that you've changed something to make it flow better. So this fixes that quote. All I need to do now is, since I mentioned his name here, this is one of the odd things about MLA. Normally I would write Thompson and then I would add the page number. So Thompson's the last name, and then the page number is 221. So I add that in here, 221. And all of this can be found in your MLA guide, or your student handbook has an MLA, sort of a simplified MLA guide, or you can find information online at places like OWL Purdue. But because I already say Thompson's name earlier in the sentence, I can actually remove Thompson's name from here because it's redundant. We already know that it's Thompson being cited here. We can skip over that. And that just about seems like everything you'd need to know about integrating sources. It's just a matter of taking quotes that say effectively what you're trying to argue, and then finding ways to lead in and out of them so that it doesn't seem jarring or too sudden or hard to understand what you're trying to make, what argument you're trying to make. There's one other way of integrating sources with your paper, though, that goes beyond simply quoting and directly citing the words of the author. You can actually go into a source like this, like Thompson's essay here, and find the overall, and cite the overall idea or argument that he's making. So, like, in the second part here, he says, this is a section entitled Rhythm and Time Signatures. And basically what he's discussing here is how the rhythm of the song doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And a lot of people have debated back and forth about whether or not it's in certain time signatures. I won't get into all that. That's an entire other field of study than the English that we're discussing here. But basically, the idea is that no one can quite figure out what the rhythm of this song is really doing, including the band themselves. He actually cites Tom York, the singer of Radiohead, um, saying that the song doesn't have a definite time signature, it doesn't have a definite rhythm. Um, so rather than cite this whole passage here, this is huge, and you don't want to cite this much in a paper. It starts to become someone else's argument rather than your own words. So rather than trying to just copy and paste a whole bunch of quotes here, even with, ellipses to divide up the information and cut it down a little bit, I'm just going to say, I'm just going to summarize the argument that he makes here. I'm going to say, in fact, is difficult or even impossible to precisely map out the rhythms present in this song, and many commentators have argued back and forth over just how the rhythms work. Now, all of this is in my own words, but it's a summary of what Thompson had to say. So even though it's in my own words, it's not my own idea. I'm summing up something that he said. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cite this too. I'm going to say Thompson, and the page numbers are 222 to 223. So another way of integrating sources is to use the ideas within them without quoting them directly. You can summarize the ideas present within the articles that you're citing or the books that you're citing, and then include this in-text citation as you would normally, as though it was a quote. The difference being that you're not putting quotation marks around it, because it is your own words. It's just your own words summarizing someone else's position. That's pretty much the basics of how you want to try to integrate sources. Often when I'm writing, this is the kind of process that I go through. I find quotes that I think are particularly compelling or ideas that are particularly compelling, and I write down the quotes or a summary of the arguments with their citations so that I can go back and find them again if I need to, and then I start writing and expanding upon those ideas with my own words. That's kind of what you do when you're integrating sources. You're taking the information that you have and then building upon it and expanding those ideas into your own thoughts and into your own argument. This is, of course, just the tip of the iceberg as far as citations are concerned. My best advice as far as citations go is honestly to look it up. That's how I did literally all of this. I do not have the MLA guide memorized. I went to a site called Owl Purdue. It's owl.english.purdue.edu. And you can see I went to their MLA guide, to their works cited page, and I was looking up, this is how you're going to cite a work in an anthology, which is what this is. It's an essay present in another anthology. You can use resources like this to help you understand exactly how to put a works cited page and an in-text citation together. You can also use the actual MLA guide itself, Or you can go into your student handbook, which also has sort of a simplified MLA guide. Basically, my advice is look it up. Don't try to memorize these citation guides. Look it up and use templates wherever possible to make your life easier. Beyond that, though, it's just a matter of going out, finding the sources, finding the quotes that you want, and then figuring out how to fit them into your paper. Just remember that you shouldn't have orphaned quotes. You shouldn't have quotes that are just floating in there on their own. Always include some sort of a lead-in or some sort of an explanation of what this quote is doing for your paper or what you're trying to say with it.